If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at @fitnessmama, and let's dive into today's episode. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. So today I'm interviewing the lovely Shelley McKenzie, who's a nutritionist, and we're discussing all things returning to exercise after having a baby. And the chat today with Shelley is a brilliant one because it's all about maintaining your nutritional needs. So we know that depletion can be a big thing after having a baby. It can be hard to prioritize our recovery and our nutritional requirements. So it was really great to chat with Shelley in today's episode. And in case you missed last week's episode, that is about returning to running postpartum from a physical perspective. And this whole month is in fact geared around returning to exercise postpartum. So it's a brilliant episode today with Shelley. Specifically with Shelley, we chat about the considerations around nutrition when getting back into exercise, and Shelley's got some amazing, simple, quick tips for mum. So do stick around to the end because Shelley really does share this amazing, quick and nutritious meal hack that I have found life-changing. Before we do dive into this episode, I just want to let you know about the free Return to Running checklist. So this checklist is for you if you'd like to return to exercise after having a baby, a return to running after having a baby, and it's really designed to help you make sure that you are on track to best support your body in this postpartum journey. So as a women's health physio, this checklist encompasses everything I feel is so important to consider during this important postpartum period. You can download this free checklist at fitnessmama.com/running checklist, and the link is in the show notes. Right, you're going to love this episode. Let's dive in to this episode with Shelley. So, Shelley, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Oh my gosh, it's so nice to be here. I'm really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been chatting for a little while on Instagram, and I just knew I had to have you on because I love everything about, I'll let you introduce yourself, but I just love how your whole business is around nutrition in a way that's sustainable, and it's not too, like I noticed your 80%, 20% thing where, yeah, let's still have our fun foods and, eat well. So on that note, Shelley, could you introduce yourself to all the listeners?
Yeah, of course, Kat. So I guess my journey has definitely developed over the years in terms of nutrition, and I definitely live by that 80-20 now. I like to say that I'm an espresso martini lover, a chocolate addict, and I can't go past a good pizza. So they're all things that are a part of my diet. And I guess that's what I really like to teach my clients now. So I am a qualified nutritionist and naturopath, and I work in an online clinic. And yeah, I guess the way my practice and my thoughts around nutrition has changed over the years is, I guess when I was in my early 20s, I moved from the country to Melbourne and got wrapped up in that partying life. And lots of alcohol and binge drinking and that whole typical Monday to Friday, which I'm sure you see a lot of as well. I used to be a personal trainer doing this. And it was that very much like, oh, Monday to Friday, I'm going to eat well and exercise. And then come the weekend, it all gets blown out the window. And so that was me in my early 20s. And then when I hit 24, I became really sick. And after a lot of investigation, I was diagnosed with what is now common back then. So this is over 10 years ago. I was diagnosed with a thyroid condition called Hashimoto's. And back then didn't know a lot about it. I was told by my doctors, here's a pill, you'll take this every day for the rest of your life and it will help the way you feel. And this is going to be, if you don't take this, you'll feel crap, in other words. Now, I believe in medication, but I definitely knew within myself that it wasn't right for me. I knew that there was a lot of moving space in terms of my overall diet and lifestyle, and I could make a lot of changes. And with that, who knows how my health would benefit. And so from that diagnosis, I did it all. I became a vegan, a paleo, keto. I dove into every single diet and they would serve me for a period of time and then I'd start feeling really crappy again. And then they'd serve me for a period of time and then I'd feel crappy. And then I went into bodybuilding and did that for a period of years and, really changed the whole shape of my body and went very restrictive. And it got to the point where I would look at myself and I had a full six-pack and I would see myself as fat, and I'd never had body image issues before, and all of a sudden they were created being in that world. So from there, it took a lot of healing and took that journey of crawling back out, and I decided to go and study nutrition and learn more about my condition itself. And from there, that turned into my career because I just fell in love and really believed in that food is medicine. And I learned how to manage my condition and heal myself, but also help others using a range of foods and, having that diversity and that variety and what have you, and not going on these diets on and off. And I learned that why they were serving me for a period of time is because it might have been lowering the inflammation, or it might have been, doing something specific in my body, but then I'd become nutrient depleted because I'd cut out entire food groups to do that. So that was that. So I went on this huge healing journey and then become a mama. So that was, now I had three kiddies under 3. So I have a 4-month-old sleeping in the next room currently. And yeah, that's been a wild journey because now my food, I'd found a really nice balance with my nutrition and how I educate my clients. And becoming a mum, I see a lot of mamas or women becoming mamas. And so it has really morphed the way I do things now because we're busy, right? It needs to be quick, easy. It needs to be toddler friendly. We're dealing with fussy eaters. We're dealing with kids that will say yes one day to something and the next day won't touch it. So I guess now that's sort of where my food philosophy is, and where it sort of lies is just like quick, easy, nutrient dense where possible, but very, very flexible. I do things with my kids that I never imagined I would have done, 5 years ago, but you say that and then you become a mum. And it like sort of goes out the window to some extent. You just counteract it. Anyway, so yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Wow. Just hearing your journey, like that's, what you were saying from your 20s to then diet to diet, like it's just, I've never dieted in my life, and I could not even imagine just the mental space that would have all taken. So
yeah, and it does, right? It consumes everything. And when you start becoming quite obsessed with food, and even if you're not obsessed with food, if you're thinking about food 24/7 and you're thinking about your next meal and what you're going to eat, like you're obsessed with food, right? And that was exactly where I was at. And I was trying to heal myself by skipping from those diets to diets. But it just ended up causing more issues that I never had before. And the bodybuilding world, I do not regret that for a second, but it was a very intense space to be in for a very intense time. And it does really shift your mindset. And, my gut was just a mess after that because it's so restrictive. I was living off the typical like tuna and rice and a tomato. That would be my lunch every day. Like I just wasn't getting in that diversity. And so it became a real obsession for me. And but I mean, that journey of doing that, I can really resonate and empathize now with my clients. So I'm glad I've done it, because prior to that, I didn't really, and I was a personal trainer, but I'd never had to lose weight, or I'd never had to, do any of these things, but I would be teaching my clients how to do that. And sometimes I couldn't understand. I'm like, yeah, but just do it, But then when I threw myself into that world, I was like, oh, this is actually really hard. Like, this is a full mindset shift that needs to occur to be able to reach those goals, you know?
Yeah. I've got so many questions for you, but I'm going to try to stay on track, because today the reason we're chatting is because we're talking, like, this month's theme for the Fitness podcast is all about returning to exercise. So I wanted to really get you on board so we could discuss nutrition for new mums who are returning to exercise postpartum. So whether or not that's returning to running, returning to the gym, and discussing those really important nutritional needs, especially if the mum's breastfeeding. So not only breastfeeding, but healing physically too. So on that note, could you please run through some of those considerations around nutrition when someone who's recently had a baby is thinking about getting back into, bumping up their exercise?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the one thing we need to remember, and I have this conversation a lot with my mamas, is that postpartum doesn't just last for that, 6 to 12 weeks. It lasts for years. Our brain literally changes for 7 years after having a baby. And that's every baby you have, your brain literally changes. So baby brain is a thing, right? And so postpartum goes on for a really long time, especially if you are perhaps depleted. And so we need to think about, just going back really quick, in pregnancy, particularly that second half of pregnancy, baby starts to store a lot of nutrients for when it's earthside. So in the second half of pregnancy, it's not uncommon for mama to start to become quite depleted in a lot of nutrients. And that's because baby's getting ready for when it's earthside, and Mother Nature will always put your baby first and will always prioritize your baby's needs over yours. So that goes for even when you are breastfeeding, your baby's going to be taking quite a lot of nutrients from you. And so, if you're coming into that postpartum period already depleted, which most women are depleted after birth, it's a big deal, right? It's like running 10 bloody marathons. It's huge. And so if we're already coming into that period depleted and then breastfeeding, we need to understand that there probably is some nutrient voids that are occurring. And if you are feeling, tired and fatigued and lethargic, and like your brain, you can't concentrate on all of these sorts of things, or your bones, are starting to get sore and tired and this sort of thing, often it's put down to, well, that's just because you had a baby. But the reason is, yes, that obviously contributes, but we still can feel well in our postpartum period and feel well enough to exercise as well. And so it might just mean that we need to have a look at some nutrients that are missing, because when we're breastfeeding, we know calcium requirements, for example, baby takes over 1,000 milligrams of calcium, of maternal calcium a day, which is just a huge, huge amount, right? And so if we don't have those calcium stores as a mother, our babies, again, Mother Nature's going to prioritize baby, and it's literally going to be sucked out of our bones and teeth. And so calcium, we know, for our bone health and that prevention of osteoporosis is really important, particularly when returning to exercise as well. And so, yeah, so I guess that's sort of like talking about the nutrient depletion. But on top of that, after birth, we've lost blood, normally around 500 ml, but that will vary from woman to woman. So iron is often really low. Iron is also a nutrient that baby stores enough for 6 months of its life earthside. So mama becomes very depleted often in that second half of pregnancy. And vitamin D is another one. And again, if our iron's low, we're going to be tired and fatigued, and we're probably not going to feel like exercising. And our vitamin D is essential for our bone health. So they're probably the main nutrients I would see that are most important, particularly when we're thinking about bone health, energy, that sort of thing when it comes to exercise. Forget what the rest of that question was, but did that answer some of it?
So, yeah, absolutely. So let's say we've got a mum listening who's 3 months after birth, wants to get back into running. What are some steps for her to know where she's at and where her body's at nutritionally? Like, This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian-owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby Bee let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months, yes, that's 9 months, they also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? Go visit www.babybeeonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply.
So, I mean, we know our bodies best, and I think birth gives us that ability to really be able to tune into our body in a whole nother way, you know, and really work out. So I think deep down you're going to know what is right for your body and if it's time for you to return to exercise or if you are depleted. As I said, if you're seeking help from a doctor and they've just sort of brushed it off as, well, you've just had a baby, that's pretty standard, just know that it's not. And I guess that's where most of my clients are coming to me, because they're being brushed off time and time again. And that's the thing, most women are seeking further help. So I always like women to get some blood tests done just to check in around that 6 or 12 week mark. And that would just be your general blood test. So looking at things like your vitamins, your minerals, so your calcium, your magnesium, your iron, your vitamin D, thyroid health, those sorts of things. So if you're going and getting those done, and if there's any markers that are perhaps out of whack, then definitely we need to sort of address that. Again, working with a practitioner who does specialize in this sort of area is really important, because going and getting a multivitamin off the shelf probably isn't going to necessarily be the right thing for you. Multivitamins, we know that they have a lot of different nutrients in small amounts, and your body, you know, they compete. So nutrients compete with each other in the body. So say you're magnesium depleted, but it's got, you know, a different nutrient in it, you're potentially competing to even absorb that magnesium. So yeah, I guess that would be the first steps, is to get some blood tests to check in around that 6 or 12 week mark. When it comes to exercise, obviously I always recommend my clients go and see a women's physio to do the internal checks and to check in there. But yeah, nutritionally, blood tests are going to show what you suspect. So if you suspect that, yeah, you're perhaps fatigued or you're tired or what have you, that's going to show where.
Yeah. And also being forewarned, what is the saying? Being forearmed. Just knowing prior to issues developing is so important. Same with the pelvic floor assessment. Like, I wish I'd had a blood test with my first baby specifically, because I distinctly remember losing weight and having trouble with breastfeeding, and I couldn't, like, I was so consumed by my baby that she just cried for the first 12 weeks, and I found it really challenging. My husband would have to put a bowl of cereal on the bench before he left for work, because it would get to 10:30 and I'd think, oh, I haven't eaten, I'm starving. So yeah, having that knowledge and that awareness of where your body's at and how you can support it before it all rears its head, I think it's super important. I'm a huge one for prevention over treatment as well.
Totally agree. And this is the thing, right? Even if you're feeling pretty well and you're at that 6-12 week mark, and normally we're going to get checked up, or your baby's going to get, you know, if you vaccinate or what have you, like, we're often seeing a doctor at some point in that period. Just go and get the blood test done. Even if you're feeling well then, go and get it done, because if something does sort of start to go a little bit out of whack, we can see really what has changed for you. And we can, knowledge is power, right? And so the more information we've got, the more we're going to be able to help ourselves and go from there.
Absolutely. Love it. Okay, shifting gears slightly. Let's say all the blood tests are fine, so there's nothing medically that needs to be, you know, addressed, but a woman is wanting to get back into exercise. What are a few simple, quick tips for mums to help them meet their nutritional needs? Because we all know that mums are busy here, new baby, lots of new things happening in their life. You know, we don't want to add another thing to the to-do list. So do you have some simple, quick tips to really help mums support their bodies during this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we're thinking about food, simple ways to get your nutrients in is things like smoothies. Easy, right? It takes 2 seconds. It's something that if you're feeding, you can still have a smoothie with one hand. I like to encourage my clients to just at the beginning of the week, if they can, either get themselves or their partners to chop up a few ingredients, put it in a Ziploc bag, throw it in the freezer. All you have to do is pull out that Ziploc bag, empty it into your smoothie jug, add water and blend it. Like it's really simple. You can add your supplements, everything into there. So I'm a big one for smoothies. I think, there's a lot around only having warmth in the postpartum and all of this sort of stuff. And I get that from a healing point of view, but I'm a mum of 3. And so I also, from a nutrient point of view and preferring to make sure I'm getting my nutrients as opposed to, I can't have a smoothie because it's cold. And so I'm just going to skip that altogether. But then I forget to eat, I forget my supplements, what have you. You know what I mean? So like, I'm really big on just getting what you can in. And I think meal prep is really essential. So meal prep, I think a lot of us have the wrong idea when it comes to meal prep. It doesn't need to be something that takes us 4 hours in the kitchen. It could just be doing that with your Ziploc bags in the freezer. Things like chia puddings are great, overnight oats. And if we're thinking about exercise, I mean, the one thing you want to do nutritionally to support your recovery, breastfeeding journey, and your exercise is to eat. Like we need to eat. So breastfeeding takes up, requires a lot of energy from our body. So in order for us to have the energy to then go and exercise, we want to make sure that we're consuming meals. And I always encourage small, frequent meals, definitely. And doing things like overnight oats, perfect pre-workout, perfect post-workout, because you're getting the oats in there, which has all that glycogen. It's going to support your muscle recovery. So that's a really good one. Using protein powders, I'm all for it as long as it's breastfeeding friendly. So you'll find a lot of plant-based ones, as long as they don't have any like burning, so like thermogenic ingredients in it, they are generally safe for breastfeeding, but you can contact the company to find out. But, making sure that you're getting your protein needs in is really important. And we know that most women aren't reaching their protein needs. So sometimes a protein powder is essential. And I always like to encourage that after a workout just to help from that muscle building and recovery. What else? So they're probably the big ones, having trays of roast vegetables cooked for the week that you could just throw on a salad with a tin of tuna. Easy, right? You're getting those nutrients in. Yeah, so I guess they're sort of like, it's just thinking about quick and easy meals that you can prepare. You could make 5 jars of overnight oats or chia puddings and have it in the fridge for the entire week. Even if you're just having a few spoonfuls at a time, at least you're getting food in when you need to.
Yeah, love it. Oh, if only we could go back in time, right? Me 10 years ago. Yeah.
I know, right? It's, and it's all a learning curve. Like I'm talking now, I've just, as I said, had my third. My first was a totally different experience. I would be like you, I would forget to eat. Mums listening to this, you hear your baby and you drop everything and go. Like I flooded our laundry only last week because I turned on the tap, heard my baby and left, but it's that sort of like fight or flight reaction that we're constantly living in, which is understandable. And I think by the third time, I've sort of just realized that if I can make from a food point of view, I know I have to be very organized. Otherwise I don't eat. And so when I'm cooking dinner, I pretty much only make meals now that I can make in batch. So I will cook enough for 2 weeks and I freeze one portion. So 1 week I have to cook, the next week I do no cooking. Yeah. That sort of thing. So it's just about trying to find ways to make things as easy as possible for you.
And what you're saying is it's true, yes, for that postpartum period, but also I've got the 3 kids aged between 5 and 9, and like it's just as important, like that, life gets busy. They've all got their after school activities. I'm getting home at 5:30 and dinner needs to be on the table within 5 minutes because they're all hangry. So there's meal planning, meal prep is like one of those necessities. And I can always tell the weeks when I don't do it, oh my gosh, everything's a headache.
It seriously is like, it's so important. One thing that we do every single week is on a Sunday, I'll just flick through a couple of recipe books, get some recipes out. And as I said, I write a list, I double the ingredients. and we go and do our food shop for the week. On the alternative week, when I've got my freezer stacked, I just go and get some fruit or whatever the kids need. But it really does need to be like, the more organized you can be, the better. And if that means getting your partner on board as well, and if you're in that postpartum period, saying to them, okay, well, this is what I want to eat every day, or can you just, when you wake up, make sure that you put a bowl of cereal on the table for me just so I eat. Like, getting them to help you in a way as well that fits around their schedule, particularly after they've gone back to work. Most of them do after 2 weeks. So just, finding the little things, but they can still help in ways, even if that is, doing a batch cooking for you on a weekend, or going and doing the food shopping, or putting that bowl of cereal on the table, or bringing you a coffee first thing in the morning because that's just what you need, right?
Absolutely. It's a must. And then training your children as soon as they're old enough to make you that coffee, which is what I've just done.
Wait for that.
It's the best. Okay, let's wrap this up. So, Shelley, do you have any final words of wisdom for, new mums that are listening today that are ready to address their health and their nutrition?
Yeah, I guess don't put too much pressure on yourself. I have to think back to when I was a new mum, and I think going from that 0 to 1 is certainly the hardest transition you will go through. That's how I found it anyway. Once you've had one, you're in your routines and you're in your sort of groove. And so adding another couple of babies is sort of a bit easier. And so don't put pressure on yourself, but certainly ask for help and just try to be as organized as possible. Find things that are easy. So, one thing I live off is, have you seen Mingle, that brand? You can get them at the supermarket. It's like a seasoning brand.
No.
So Mingle, got to get onto it.
I will. I'll Google it straight away.
Yeah, Mingle seasonings, for example, do these like beautiful seasoning packets, and there's just all herbs and spices in it, no nasty ingredients. On the back, it just says, add a can of coconut cream, add this vegetable, and add this protein. And it literally, those meals take 5 minutes to make. So the packets come in like, there's a spaghetti one, and there's a butter chicken, and there's, doing things like that. I also have my freezer stocked at Woolies. You can get like macro frozen organic vegetables. I use that more than what I use fresh veggies, because they don't last these long, like fresh veggies don't last long these days. But having your freezer, and you can just, I don't have to chop, I don't have to do anything. You know what I mean? So it's just like finding little things that are going to work for you. Those little steamed bags of vegetables. If you're struggling to get your vegetables in, go and get just those steamed bags of vegetables and just throw it in your microwave for 30 seconds. Like, whatever it takes to get it in, you can always build on your nutrition, and it doesn't need to be perfect right now. Just try as best as you can, and go easy on yourself.
Shelley, I think you've just changed my life. I have just Googled while you're talking, Mingle, what is it called? Seasoning. And like, they've got so many different flavours, as you just said, but on the package it says all you need is 1, protein, like add your protein, and it says how much. 2, 3 types of vegetables, and then 1 can of coconut milk and 1 sachet. Like, it's just simple.
It's the easiest thing ever. And I don't know what it is, right? I always say this to my mum because we laugh. She uses it as well. And I always say to her, I know how to make the herb mixes and I know how to do this, but having it there is just easy. And as I said, if you can grab just some frozen veggies, often they're snapped fresh, so they're actually fresher than what you're buying anyway. You can have some frozen veggies in your freezer and then just buy. Like, I don't even buy these days like chicken as a breast. I buy it all diced because I'm like, I don't want to chop things. I want life to be easy. So those Mingle seasonings, we have them about 3 times a week. The Japanese curry with potato in it is like so good. You don't need rice or anything with it. You just put potato.
I'm
delicious.
So excited.
They're at like this. They're at Woolies, I'm pretty sure, or
I think and Coles.
Maybe both. Yeah, I was about to say maybe both. And most health food stores.
There's curry, there's stroganoff, there's bolognese, there's, oh my gosh, mind
They're very
blown.
kid friendly as well. Like, my kids gobble them up. So they're very easy meals for the kids. You know, if weight loss is something you're looking for, you can just sub out some of the heavier ingredients like the rice and stuff and just still have that in there, but just maybe add more vegetables and easy. So there you go.
Oh my gosh.
If that's all you got out of this podcast, I'm glad.
Because you're right. You have the meat already chopped up. You have the vegetables already chopped up. There's no excuse, right? Like it's just easy.
5 minutes.
The fact that I don't make separate meals, I used to when they were toddlers and babies and stuff, but now that they're older, I don't make separate meals. So I eat what they eat. And I'm going to, look, I'll report back. I'll message you.
Please do. I'm dying to hear what you think of them. Like we've been using them. Audrey, my baby, is now like 4.5 months-ish, I'm going to say. We've been using them since she was born, and they were a game changer for us. Like they just make life simple. So get onto them.
I cannot believe I don't know about it. I feel a bit jibbed.
Well, you do now, and they'll change your life. So you're welcome.
Okay, amazing, Shelley. Thank you so much. For anyone who wants to learn more about you, where and how do they find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I am Shelley McKenzie _ naturopath, and my online clinic is Freedom Wellness. So on my website, Freedom Wellness, there's lots of recipes and things like that. I'm a bit of a one-pan girl, so it'll all be 15 minutes, one pan, pretty easy. So, yeah, that's Freedom Wellness. And then I've got a podcast, which I'm a co-host, and that is the No BS Approach to Motherhood. And in that podcast, we dive a lot more into nutrition for whatever stage you're at in your journey.
Brilliant. And I will put all those links in the show notes. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Shelley. It was life-changing to chat.
Thanks, Kat. Thanks for having me.
We'll
Bye,
catch
guys.
you soon.
Bye.
So that's it, ladies. Before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including how to connect with Shelley at fitnessmama.com/podcast. And also don't forget about that free download, that return to running checklist, if this is something that you want to, if this is on your goals, if you want to return to exercise, return to running postpartum. That's it, ladies. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.